So when I grow up, coach, what are you gonna be when you grow up?
I really liked on page 35 is there's this sort of like little card and it asks six questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my greatest accomplishment is time flies by when I want to be known for. If money grew on trees, I want to
Okay.
make a difference by. And if I had no one to answer to myself, I'd. And I thought those were really great because you can just kind of tell by like what you think the answers would be, like how really meaningful they could be. So
Yeah.
I was just wondering like how you decided to come up with those questions and like the answers that you find like people coming up with and that sort of thing.
Ooh. Um, I love this question because I don't know if I really know the progression. I definitely, as a certified life coach, I think they're like basic life coachy sort of questions that we're
Mhm.
all sort of taken through that we sort of we want to cut out the BS and really get to the
Mhm.
heart of the matter. So I think that probably one of those questions is, if you had all the money in the world and it wasn't an option, then what would you do? That's just one of those
Mhm.
questions that we're just sort of taught to ask our clients because it just sort of cuts out the BS because
Right.
over that we build up a lot of excuses. Then it's just cutting into, okay, well, is that feasible? And do you really feel that you could do that? And why not? And then we're able to cut into the excuses. But in terms of really those questions, sort of honing it in and having them be nice and juicy, at this point, and it blows my mind, but at this point, I've worked personally with over 150 different creative types. People
Mhm.
mostly in their mid 20s to early 40s, most of my clients. And I just find that while taking them through these different exercises and while we talk in our sessions and the different homework that I assign, even though everyone has different goals and everyone takes a different journey, just the same sort of topics keep coming up and coming up, and the same
Mhm.
sort of questions. There are questions that, I'll give them in the exercises and they'll write back like, oh, this made me really stop and think for a while. Or they'll mention it on the call like, this is the question that I've been just, marinating over all week that really stood out. And so I think
Mhm.
those questions that are on that page are the ones that I noticed my clients kept going back to and what ended up being really like the heart of the matter for them. So I feel like that's why they're there and they need to just be out there in
Yeah.
bold. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love them. I think they're really great.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Um, so okay, so on page 45,
Uh huh.
this is where you kind of talk about your own experience with transitioning, going from, well, I guess was the executive assistant job, right? So you went from that
Mm
to sort of starting to take your classes and stuff. And do you find that maybe a lot of people find that like maybe they can't pursue like full time the thing that they like are really really passionate about, because you mentioned, or that they sort of have to keep like something on the side. Like there's another person's story, I guess, where she does part-time
hmm.
messengering
Mm
and this,
hmm.
but she still gets to do her art. So maybe you can talk about like those sort of situations where you
Yes.
some people they still do like a quote unquote real job, but they
Yes.
find a way to make it work so they can still like pursue in a good amount like what they're really passionate about.
I love it. And yeah, I mean, those are the majority of my clients. I think probably because the people who don't have to do that, whether they're independently wealthy or, they're stay at home moms or whatever, and they don't have that piece of needing that income. Those are most of the people that come to me and that want help with a coach because they want to figure out how could they use their time wisely, how could they sort of do it all, and how could they get there. I like to call that an effective escape. And so I work with all of my clients on helping them get to their effective escape, which is actually an exercise, one of the exercises in Operation Creative Career Cheer. So it's all about figuring out for you in particular, what do you need in order to feel as comfortable and confident as you can to take that leap and leave that job. For me personally, once I figured out that I wanted to be a life coach, I knew that the quickest way for me to just fall flat on my face would be to just go and do it full time. I know
Mhm.
that would have lasted like a month and then I would have been eating ramen noodles and my husband would be like, where's your half of the rent? And, it would have been that sort of thing. So I knew, okay, I need to find a job that isn't going to require me to have a BlackBerry and be on call 24/7. That isn't going to have needless travel. That isn't going to have a verbally abusive boss, which I had at the time that I figured out I wanted to be a life coach. So for me, like, my main important thing was, let's find a job that could support me taking my classes and building this business. And I know it's going to take me a while. So that's what I did. The executive assistant job at a financial consulting company. If I didn't have it was not like my place at all, but I knew that I could do the job sort of easily. And there was no overtime, and they, forced you to take your lunch hour because they didn't want to pay you for the overtime for the lunch hour. So I needed all those things. And so what I work with my clients on is, well, what do you need to support it? And how do you make sure that you carve out the time to then work on what your passion project is and work on what you want your full-time business to be? And most of the people I work with want to be entrepreneurs. And so usually we are working on, how do you get comfortable and confident enough with being your own boss to leave that behind? But then that also brings into account, what's your plan B? And what everyone's comfortable with in terms of their plan B is different for everyone. What do they need money-wise in the bank in order to feel like they could leave their full-time job and give themselves a leg up without having to scramble, go to plan B? Do they need health insurance? Do they need professional website? What do they need? And so that's really what I work with my clients on, and what I kind of encourage everyone to do. But really the underlying piece of all that too is to take your baby steps and just do something every day. Things do not happen overnight, and I feel like successful businesses don't get built overnight. So don't rush it and don't make your head explode. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, but you're just doing something every day to move forward. And you'll be able to leave, I promise. It took me 2 years and 7 months, but I did it. And now I've been a full-time coach for 17 months. I talk about it like it's a baby, but it kind of is. But it's working. So it's good.
So I feel like something that a lot of creatives struggle with also is the fact that if they do want to say be a full-time photographer or a full-time graphic designer, is that they come to realize that it's not just, I'm going to design all day, or I'm just going to take photos all day. It involves managing your money and managing clients and doing a lot of business stuff that they might not sort of have in their skill set. So I guess maybe what are some resources? Because I feel like you probably encounter a lot of people like that. So what do you feel like are some good resources to kind of learn how to effectively manage your time and get those sort of entrepreneur skills on the side while still being able to be creative and do your art and that sort of thing?
You bring up such a good point, and I think that it's about embracing our creativity and the fact that we're right brain people, and not trying to work against that. So I have a lot of clients that come to me, and I would say about 95% of my clients are what I like to call Renaissance souls, or people with a lot of different passions and interests, and we don't want to put ourselves in a box and do one thing. And being an entrepreneur really feeds into that, because even for me, yes, I'm a coach and I work with my clients and I'm on the phone with them and I do sessions, but I'm also, a writer, a marketer, I'm the finance person. But there are some things that I don't like doing. So I think it's a combination of things. It's really dipping your feet into each of those pools. I don't know, is that an analogy? Wearing those different hats and then really seeing, what do you like doing? Where do you find that the time's going by quickly, you're kind of in your groove, what's a strength? What do you want to keep doing more of? And then what do you want to delegate as soon as humanly possible? And when the time comes, you might be able to find, I know it's scary to think about paying someone for something that you could do yourself, but kind of seeing the value in that, being able to know, okay, you know what, if I'm spending hours, typing in business cards of people that I'm at a networking event, I could give that to someone for $20 an hour that knows what they're doing, or less than that, and be able to send that on their way. So that's sort of the first thing. I had a client, she was so great, did a trial run for a business. She's an Etsy shop and she's a grant writer full time. And she was, she had a Heartsy feature, which is kind of like a Groupon, but for Etsy. So it's a
Oh,
really
nice.
big, like they send out a coupon and they said like, here, you know, you have a day to buy these coupons and it's good for these sites. And so she knew she was gearing up for something big. She took a day off of work. She like took a vacation day or personal day. And she's like, okay, I know that today I'm going to be this Etsy shop owner all day and like through the weekend. So I think it came out on a Friday, whatever. She did that for herself and sort of tested the waters and was like, oh, okay, this is what it's going to be like. Do I like this? Is this okay? So I think that that needs to be a piece of it too. And thankfully she was like, yes, I do. I would love to do this full time, even with all the other, you know, admin stuff. In terms of resources, I love the book, The Renaissance Soul. It's great. You can get it from the library. I love The Right Brain Business Plan is a fantastic book that just came out. And if you just go to rightbrainbusinessplan.com, you'll see, you'll have links to the book itself. And then Jennifer Lee, the author, also runs it as an e-course. That's kind of expensive, but if you want that sort of forum, you could get it.
Yeah.
And it's also a downloadable ebook as well with like these MP3s for your thing. So she's really great because she helps you kind of dig into that. In terms of the other resources I love using mint.com for my finances because it takes a little while to set everything up, but then it runs pretty automatically and it gives you these nice graphs and pie charts and like things look pretty and you can see it, you know, visually as opposed to something like Quicken and you have to enter all that stuff. If you go to whenigrowupcoach.com and go to my resources page, you'll see a whole slew of other things that I recommend. But there are a lot of really right brain friendly products and people out there. Hallelujah and amen, thankfully. So yeah, it's just all about figuring out what works for you though.
Right. No, I definitely agree with that. Like, you have to get to the point where you realize that spending your time trying to do something that either you're not really good at or you don't like, sometimes it's worth it to pay the money because really you're not saving, in a way, like you're not saving money by doing it yourself because you could be doing something else that you're better at, more productive at, and it's a hard thing because it always feels like if you're spending money, you know, but you have to get out of that.
Yes,
mindset.
and there's always ways around it. I mean, you could find someone to barter with. You could, you know, I think having that support system in place and other people who are doing similar things or starting their own businesses or working those full-time jobs, whoever you could get kind of around you to be your tribe. I have a bunch of women I live in Brooklyn, and I realized I knew a bunch of really creative women who were having their own businesses in different ways. And I was like, they all need to meet each other. We all need to like get together every month. So I forced them all to meet. And now we call ourselves the Brooklyn Brunch Business Babes, and we get together in someone's house once a month. We all take turns hosting, and we really just, even though there's coaches, there's a woman who makes handbags and wallets, there's a photographer, there's a graphic designer. We all have different businesses, but we just come together and we kind of update each other. This is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm struggling with. Just getting all those brains, like, oh my God, there are resources flying out everywhere, and we're able to like get all these juicy notes when we're done and email them to each other and figure out what to do with taxes and what to do with, you know, like how do we do time tracking? What system do you use? So that's always really helpful too.
Awesome.
Yeah. That was Amazeballs.